This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And this is January the 25th, 2022. Very cold out there. I like being in my cozy apartment, especially doing these Zooms. And folks, Deadly Friend is, well, we are in the, it was celebrating its 35th anniversary last year. We're kind of catching the end of it here, but that's okay. We're still going to celebrate it among other films by my guest. Folks, I give you the awesome Frank Cavestini. Did I
Cavestani.
mess Cavestani? Oh, I
Yeah.
knew I was gonna mess that up.
No, well, I go with Steenie. I'll go Steenie.
Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I meant no
No, no,
disrespect.
no, not at all. Look, I've been dealing with this name all my life. So. In fact, the thing is that my family, which part of them were from Spain and part of them from the Philippines, spell it with a Y at the end. And
Okay.
my dad, because he worked with all these Italians in New York, these famous Italian gangsterish nightclubs like the Copacabana, he made himself be Italian by putting an I on the end instead of a Y. But it sounds the same. Cavestani, with a Y or an I. It sounds the same way.
There we go. Well, you said that your last name means the respected one. I like that.
Yeah, that's what I was told. I had some famous people in Spain. One
Hmm.
was a famous poet, Antonio Garcia Cavestani. Another was the Minister of Agriculture or something under Franco, which I'm not too proud of. But
Okay.
anyway, they were all over Spain, and they're Castilian mostly, so they're kind of like rebels, which is what I've been doing here in America anyway. So I'm part of the same lineage as these Cavestanis. I once met the ambassador to Spain at there was a famous dancer called Antonio Gadas. He was
Uh-huh.
an incredible dancer. I saw him at Manhattan City Hall in New York. And I was taken there by a French director named Robert Cordier and his German photographer wife at the time. And they warned me to just be myself as we went in. We were going to be allowed to go in and meet Antonio Gadas. And he says, just don't say anything, okay, Frank? I said, I won't. So we get in line and we go into the thing of this dressing room and they introduce me. And the ambassador to Spain pulls me in. He says, this is the Cavestani. And the goddess greets me and ignored my friends. They were mad at me, I think, for a year after that. Because, but I didn't know at the time my name was being touted around. Someone was running for election in Spain. I had no idea about it at all. But these people thought they had to impress me and bring me into the dressing room first past my friends who brought me to this event. And it was very embarrassing for them and kind of fun for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, before we get talking about any of your films, would you mind giving us a little bit of your background and how you got into acting?
Well, I was a kind of, I grew up in Upper Manhattan
Mm-hmm.
and 104th Street in Amsterdam,
Uh-huh.
and had a life like a tree grows in Brooklyn, with 5-story building. I would go up. My next door neighbor was an acrobat, Rene von Mutschau,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a handsome German with jet black hair and a tall sister named, what was her name? I forget it. And anyway, she would walk around in the bra and panties, and he would do his acrobatic stuff on the roof, and I would join in. And he would warn me never to go into show business. He toured the world with an acrobatic act. He was, in fact, when we got our first television, I saw him on television, my next door neighbor, on the Ed Sullivan show and the Seal Test Circus on Saturdays doing the acrobats. I thought everybody was on television because my next door neighbor was on television, so I would be on television. And when we later moved to Queens and stuff, I grew up and I wanted to act, and I decided I wanted to be an actor. And I went to the American. I got a job at NBC, which was a great job. I was a page there, along with Michael Eisner, who was a page too. Interesting story there. But you know, I ended up going to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts on a scholarship, place where Kirk Douglas went and Edward G. Robinson and the one who, a bunch of other people. I can't think of all their names now. Anyway, I graduated from there and I got a television show called The Defenders. And I was co-starring on that show. And then I got another show called, I forget the name of it. Anyway, my career began because I had done a play with Shelley Winters,
Hmm.
and Robert Walker was in it, and he broke his leg, and she picked me to take over on the tour, and she said, Frank has been watching this show on the stage and in the wings for weeks. He'll do the part. So they put me in the starring role. I got an agent out of it, and the rest of mine stuff was history. And I was working as an actor in New York in plays and television. And then I got drafted, and I tried to get out of it as best I could, but I ended up not getting out of it, and ended up in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where I got in an argument with a sergeant there. And he said, I'm going to send your ass to Vietnam. I said, you can't do that. And he said, oh, yeah, watch me. And sure enough, a month later, I was on a plane going to Vietnam.
Oh.
But the plane landed in San Francisco, and we were put on a ship, probably the last troop ship to go to Vietnam, with 3,000 other soldiers and all their equipment, tanks and guns and all kinds of artillery. And we sailed out of San Francisco with the music fading, the radio music fading on our little transistors until we got past Hawaii, and then ended up at Okinawa and then Quinnon Bay and Cameron Bay, where they unloaded us like in World War II or something. And there I was in this land that smelled like marijuana, and I stayed there for another year, and I luckily didn't get wounded, but I was in combat a lot. But and I ended home, where 36 hours later, I wrote about it. I went from being in combat to being in San Francisco with my cousin, who thought, Frank, there's something wrong with you. You don't sleep anymore. So that was the beginning of my post-traumatic stress, which I've had all my years.
Oh, wow. That must have been frightening. I could not imagine being put into that. I mean, I see movies, like Apocalypse Now and Platoon, which are two of my favorite war movies, and you get the canopy jungles and whatnot in Vietnam, but
I made a documentary called Born on Operation Last Patrol, which you can see online.
Okay.
About Ron Kovic. And Ron Kovic then wrote a book, and the book became a movie called Born on the 4th of July, directed by Oliver Stone. Well,
Yeah.
Oliver Stone contacted me and he said, Frank, I'm going to need you on this movie. So I came in and they used my documentary for the last 15 minutes of the Born on the 4th of July. And Oliver let me sit next to him in the director's chair and direct all those big scenes in Miami that we were shooting. And people would come up and ask him a question. He said, I don't know, ask Frank. I wasn't there. Ask him, he was there. And Oliver and I became fast friends. And, that's the rest of that is history. My document, he wrote a nice thing when I sent my documentary out in discs. He put it on it. This is a perfect complimentary documentary to my film, Operation Born on the 4th of July. And so Oliver and I have been friends ever since then. And I talked to Ron Kovic, who is probably one of the world's most famous Vietnam veterans, paralyzed from his waist down. And we talk often, and we did a lot of political events in the 80s and stuff. We actually demonstrated in Senator Cranston's office for a number of days, Ron on a hunger strike and me running the press up and down in an elevator. But, those were the days when we were protesting the war and then protesting the fact that Vietnam veterans who had Agent Orange and every other thing had no real place to go because they were denied services, because the people of Korean War and World War II didn't understand the things that they had, which, all soldiers from the Civil War come back with post-traumatic stress, but they never really treated it that way. And
No.
they never really treated the fact that it doesn't last like 6 months. It goes on the rest of your life. Once that horror is written on the gray matter in your brain, you wake up nights when you're 55 years old screaming about saving your buddy or incoming or something, and your wife looks at you like, "What the hell's the matter with you? Are you insane?" And you go embarrassedly put a pillow over your head and say, "No, no, I'll be all right." But you won't be all right because it's a done deal.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you didn't get wounded, but I'm sorry you have to live with that. Like I couldn't relate to that because I've never been through it. But
You can relate to it. No, you don't have to go through it. You know that UCLA did a recent survey on post-traumatic stress, and they found out it happens instantly after you're in an incident. It can be a car crash, an airplane malfunctioning and landing badly. If you're freaked out, that thing just writes across your brain, and it's going to be with you for the rest of your life. So
uh,
post-traumatic stress doesn't mean you're a veteran. Post-traumatic stress means you've been involved in some horrible incident. You could be beat up by the police, and that'll stick with you forever. You won't forget that. And you'll wake up 2 years later in a sweat and wonder what's wrong with you. What's wrong with you? Some guy beat you up 5 years ago for no good reason.
yeah. Well, that is like
No,
I
it's a,
said,
no. You can Google it, Greg. The study was done over a 10-year period by UCLA, and they found that the post-traumatic stress happens when you're involved in something where the adrenaline goes to your brain and you've been involved in some terrible thing. And the thing is, they haven't found out a way of erasing that. Once it's written on your brain, it's a done deal. I mean, you're locked up in a room by yourself as you're supposed to go to sleep, and suddenly anxiety just fills your whole body and you don't know where it's coming from. That's the problem because well, you talk to your wife or your friends and they don't know what's wrong with you. And then you start drinking or doing drugs or whatever to alleviate this anxiety, which was given to you 5 years ago in a car accident, and you're done. And at least the Vietnam veterans and the VA now recognize this because of the demonstrations that Ron and I did, and they recognize, thank God I can go there now and get help and not be said, well, what do you mean you can't sleep at night? It's 25 years after you were in combat. They don't do that anymore. They say, we'll help you, which is
yeah.
wonderful. The VA is much better than it's ever been. People don't, people criticize it, and I say they've been very helpful.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that, and like I said, I couldn't imagine uh being there with guns and bombs and all that stuff going off around me, and so
The
I'm glad
terrible
you,
thing, the
yeah.
terrible thing, Greg, is it's a matter of fact. You carry a weapon with you every day, and people scream incoming, incoming, and something like that. And it's you get hunkered down because of sniper fire, and then you say, when's lunch? I mean, it's like a normal day. That's what's wrong because then you come back to society. And you're walking down the street in New York, checking out people for arms and see if they're carrying packages that could harm you. Now that's crazy. Now you're crazy and you're in normal society. When you did that in Vietnam, it was a normal day.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's what's kooky there. Okay, I'll shut up. You go on.
No, no, you, um, that is a horrific background, I gotta say. But you had quite the film career, as I mentioned at the start. Deadly Friend celebrated its 35th anniversary last year, and we sadly lost Wes Craven back in, I think it was
I've
2015.
got a story about that day when I worked there. I only worked there a day.
Yeah,
I was known as the noisy neighbor or something.
yeah,
I came out and started screaming, get whatever it was off the lawn and blah 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 blah. And Greg, Wes said, okay, that's fine, print it. And we all went to lunch. At lunch, I ate some ham off this truck that they were serving us. And I thought, there's a little bit of greenness on this ham, but I just ate it anyway. Well, like 25 minutes later, I go back and they're going to shoot something else. And I didn't know if I was included or not. So I wanted to maybe go home. And Wes was out there in the streets of Universal. I said, hey, is there a doctor in the set? He said, who wants to know? Directors being tough guys. And I said, I do. He said, why? I said, I think I'm going to be terribly ill. so, so he said, well, you're finished. You can go home if you want. So I said, okay, great. So I asked around any more, because usually on these sets they have a nurse or they more so now than then in the days when I was shooting that. I said, is there an EM around here? A medical person? The people said no. And then it happened. I had been poisoned by whatever they call that, food poisoning or whatever.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
started regurgitating and vomiting all over the cables that ran through the set. And I think the crew was looking at me saying, "Yo, you son of a bitch! Good God, And I said, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And the cables they had to pull were now filled with vomit. So I had to get out of there. Wes had basically released me. He said, "Well, if you're sick, go home. I don't really need you anymore." So anyway, I called my friends. At the time, I was living across the street from Universal, so only a short ride from my wife and his friends. My wife shows up with a comic friend of mine, Sam Kennison.
Oh, love Sam. I did a tribute
Yeah.
on him with his brother Bill.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
they put me in the car, and hours later, I had gone to an emergency thing, and they said, "You're fine. Whatever it was, it's passing through your system, and it's just a momentary food poisoning." And I went home, and it was fine. But that's my Deadly Friend story. I got deadly ill on the set of Deadly Friend, and Wes didn't give a shit. He basically said, "Just get out of here. I don't need you. Go ahead, go home."
Was Christy Swanson there that day?
I don't know who she is. Who's that?
Oh, she was the Deadly Friend.
I guess she was there. It was a huge setup at Universal on the hill there. I don't know if you know L.A. You know
I've
L.A.?
never been there. I've never been
Well,
there.
Universal is sort of on a hill in the valley, and it has some tall buildings, and then it has the place where everybody can go visit and take tours on these trams that they have and everything. But we were shooting on some of the oldest streets they have there. They have streets filled with fronts of houses and stuff. That makes it, the place I ran out of was only a front. The back, of course, was nothing.
Mhm.
That's how they are in those streets, the movie streets. And
You
so that's where I was. I could actually see my condo from the hilltop I was working on.
do you it's interesting you mentioned Sam Kennison. Do you have any Sam Kennison stories?
I have dozens of them. One of them, he came to my house. I used to after he did a show at the Comedy Store, he would come up to my house and we all party, doing major things we shouldn't do. But anyway, Sam one night took some girl, threw her on my kitchen table, and started to fake hump her. You know what I mean? Everybody had their clothes on. But that wasn't the issue. The issue was my table collapsed. So my dining room table, which was a fine wooden table, had now collapsed to the floor. And he said, "Don't worry about it, man. I'll take care of it." Or maybe he said the opposite of that because he could be a jerk sometimes. Sam and Kenneth and I love Sam. I got along. I used to go to his shows and stuff. And he thought I was hitting on his Japanese girlfriend. And I wasn't. I had gone to a flower shop that she had in West LA to buy flowers one day, and he thought that I was wanting to take her out or something. But I had a wife at the time, and I wasn't interested in Sam's girlfriend, who was a nice girl who was a comic. But anyway, I hung around with Sam for quite a while. He used to come up to my house every weekend.
What a tragedy when we lost him, huh?
Yeah, terrible. I heard his friend Majid was in the car behind him and held him in his arms at the last moment, and he said that Sam said that his last words were "Why me?" and then died. He
Yeah.
was on a two-lane highway, and the other car drove into his lane and hit the front of his car, and the steering wheel crushed his chest. He was driving actually.
Oh.
Yeah, it's terribly sad because he was a wonderful, talented crazy man, but with loads of talent. An ex-preacher. You know that, right?
Yeah, like I said, I had his brother Bill on in tribute to Sam, and Bill was talking to me about all of this, and I think he was planning to get back into the ministry, from what
No,
I understood.
no,
Oh
no.
yeah.
Oh, maybe Bill was. I don't think Sam was. I really don't think so. He had a lot of other things going because he lived near me. His
Oh,
his
okay.
his bungalow type house was about a mile from my house. So I used to see him. He'd be up by me or I'd be down by him, and I was close to people who were close to him.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was a person who was very uh, social, and I think I would have heard if he wanted to go back in the ministry. His career
Oh,
was booming. He was doing great.
I could have misheard, but I
I
got
mean,
the end. Yeah.
he was on his way to Vegas when he died to do a show in Vegas. Now, why would you do a $10,000 show night in Vegas and then think you had to go back to the ministry? Not that he didn't make money in the ministry. He told me he made a lot of good money. He would do gigs for these. He would show up and do tent type revivals, and end up with $150,000 or something. I mean, he told me it was all such a religious scam. All these people would come in and contribute $25 to be there in the tent. He'd have 1,000 people, and he split it with the minister for the church, and he'd put the rest of him and Bill in their pockets, and they'd go down the road and do another one of these. He said he made a lot of money being a preacher.
Yeah.
It was a good deal kind of racket. And I only call it racket because I'm religious too. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing is that if I have a system that allows me to make $50,000 a weekend over just telling stories about God, I think it's I don't like original. I'm Catholic. I like it. I just go in and you drop 50 cents in the box at the beginning of the door, and then
Mm-hmm.
no one says anything to you. But, but I don't think the priests are making that much money. Although the
Yeah.
Catholic Church is probably one of the richest entities in the world, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. Well, I've always loved Sam Kennison, so yeah. No, I might be misquoting or misthinking, because I haven't listened to that interview in a while, but Bill told some interesting stories about Sam. I'll tell you
Oh, I'm
that.
sure Bill knows a lot more than me. I shut my mouth over it.
Yeah.
But Bill, I think Sam may have a, a, a child somewhere. I don't know exactly, but there was so much happening in those days. There was
Yeah.
so much scandalous stuff happening with Bill, with Sam and his roommates and his other partners that he roomed, hung around with. Anyway, that's a whole other story. I'm so sure someone will do a book about it. Bill should do a book about it.
Well, I want to ask you about some of the other films that you're involved in. One, of course, is the China Syndrome.
Oh, I just saw it last night, the other night. That was great.
Mm-hmm. You play a news reporter in that. Any
Yeah.
stories about that?
Well, I like one thing. They kept using my name through the movie. Let Frank do it. Frank will cover that story.
Mm-hmm.
I had a minor role running around the studio room, or whatever the newsroom or whatever. But I was in the background in a lot of ways of a lot of scenes. But the director was a friend of mine, James Bridges.
Uh-huh.
And the good story is I went to see him, and he said, "Frank, how you doing?" I went to see him. I think it was at Culver City Studios. I'm not sure where they were located for the beginning of it. He said, "What's up?" I said, "I want a job." I said, "Yeah, you want a job?" He says, "You got it. Let's go to lunch." I said, "No, no, wait a minute. I'm serious." He said, "I'm serious too. You want a job? You got it. I just told you got it. You'll work about 3 weeks. Come on, let's go to lunch." So that was the beginning, which was a very funny moment because most actors don't like to be told they got a job that easily. It seems to be you want to go through more hoops to get the job. But anyway, that that he was really great to me on the set. when we would he would do long shots or wide shots, and that I was in, he would come down and talk to me and say, "How was it in there? Was Jane doing all right? And how was this? How was the rest of the crowd?" He would ask me privately in my ear, and I'd say, "Well, I thought it was going all right from where I stood, blah, 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 blah." Because he was up 40 feet on a crane, and he couldn't tell actually how it was. People pushing each other around in a press conference about you know the what just happened inside the plant or something. So that was great fun because the director would come down and talk to me, which I think freaked everybody else in the cast out. Who was this, you know, minor part guy being asked by the director, "How was it in there, Frank?" So that was a nice little moment. And of course, Scott Brady and stuff. I love working with those old actors in that movie. Bromley and those. They were such great people. It's amazing when you get to the top of really classy people that have been around. They're not jerks and assholes. They're actually very generous and interesting people. They were asking me questions and they were allowing me to ask them questions about their past career and stuff over lunch or wherever we were at the moment where you could relax and do that. So that was really great stuff. So I love being in movies like that. And China Syndrome, I'll tell you an interesting story about China Syndrome.
Mhm.
China Syndrome came out, and that week, in the back of Newsweek, uh, Will, whatever his name is, what God, I hate being older and not remember names. Will, oh, what was it? Maybe you can look it up sometime. Anyway,
Yeah.
he wrote this political writer who was sort of right wing. I like him now. He's a very intelligent guy. He's still around. Wrote that China Syndrome was this false movie and it couldn't happen, and they just made up this story about a China Syndrome when you don't know what it is. That week, while Newsweek was on the stand, 3 Mile Island happened. So
Uh-huh.
it actually happened. The thing that was in the movie actually happened at 3 Mile Island. They had an almost China Syndrome event at 3 Mile Island. You know that, right? Do you know about Three
Mhm.
Mile Island?
I don't know.
Well, Google it because what happened is they had a huge event there in their nuclear plant, so similar to the movie that you think they ripped it off prior to history, you know. And so you look that up because they had almost China Syndrome event where the water dropped out of the rods, and they were about to, have a China Syndrome. But you know what China Syndrome is, right? Means it burns so much it goes to the bottom of the earth and ends up in China. But what happens is it releases radioactive material to the surrounding area, which again, which years later happened in Chernobyl. I mean, it did happen in Chernobyl, the same thing, which they had to isolate 500 miles in every direction, and you couldn't go into there anymore, and dead cows and stuff. I mean, are you in a university?
No, I just
Did
volunteer
you
at the
go?
radio station.
Did you go to university?
I took some film courses. That was about
Oh,
it. Yeah.
okay. Well, you should read about all what you should get an education today. China Syndrome happened. The movie came out, and it happened. Although Will, what was his name? God, Will something or other. We got to look him up. If my wife was back, I'd ask her to do that. But uh, you know, China Syndrome happened. He said it was a terribly false movie about nothing that could happen, and then it happened while his article, which was in the back of Newsweek, an editorial, actually happened in 3 Mile Island. Anyway, I'll shut up again.
Well, you had a good cast in that. Jack Lemmon, Jane Fonda, a young Michael Douglas, and of course you would be in another Michael Douglas film, The American President. So
Michael and I just started a newspaper in Los Angeles. You know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was a newspaper here called the LA Weekly, which became quite popular and gave out. And while I was on the set of China Syndrome, I said to Michael one day, he was on one side of a speaker and I was on the other side. I said, Michael, how would you like to have a newspaper in this town, own a newspaper in this town, just like the Village Voice in New York. See, I know he grew up in the East. He grew up in Westport, Connecticut. Well, he
Uh-huh.
said, "Boy," he said, "what are you talking about?" And I explained what I was talking about. He said, "Well, come into the office next week." So I came into his office with Jay Levin, who was a publisher and producer of this newspaper, the LA Weekly in Los Angeles, and we explained it to him, and he basically said, "I'm in," and he gave us the first $250,000. This happened while I was making the movie, so I've got an extra part in the movie with a couple of lines. And in the meantime, I'm putting together a newspaper which became very effective in Los Angeles. It became a very popular newspaper in Los Angeles and a very successful newspaper, later bought by Gannett for like $10 million. So Michael's always been grateful to me because I made him a lot of money.
Mhm.
But he's always been generous to me. And whenever I had a project or something, I could call him up and he would listen to it, and listen to the ideas. And he's one of the best guys. Once in a while, I'd be in a restaurant and I'd walk by his table, and he'd say, "Frank, come here, come here. I want you to meet people." And he'd say, "This young guy helped me start the LA Weekly here." Blah, blah, blah. He was very open and generous about. He didn't like say, "Well, that's private. I'm not going to talk about it." He did talk about it. And yeah, I was on another movie with him. What was it?
American President.
American President, a wonderful movie, delightful movie. And when I saw him on the set the first day, he said to me, "What, did he hire all leftists to play right wing people?" That was his idea, because I was one of the right wing guys. My line was, "The president's got a girlfriend," which is great. It was a pivotal line in the whole thing because that's what happens. That's what they go after him for.
Mhm.
But the problem that day was in being a room smoking cigars. Everybody was smoking cigars. And the prop people had dozens of cigars that they would cut off and relight for you. And they would pump smoke into the room. So as a bunch of actors in a room, you would begin to get dizzy at like 10 o'clock in the morning, knowing that you're going to go half the day doing this smoking cigars. I often wonder, Richard, you know, what, God, what's anyway, this other actor, Richard something or other, I can't remember. And he said, "No, I'm not going to do that. It's going to get old real quick." But I was smoking cigars, and by mid afternoon, because the scene was still going on, you know how long these things take. I was outside having coffee, still smoking the cigar I had from the set. I asked the prop guy. I said to the prop guy, "How many you got? None of these, of these, half burnt cigars." He says, "Dozens." you know, so, whenever you needed a cigar, because you couldn't have a cigar that was, in one scene fully lit and another scene half burnt down. So he only had burnt down ones, and he would be cutting them off in a bucket behind the couch we were in, and just giving us another cigar, which I don't know. I've smoked cigars once in a while, but smoking one for 4 or 5 hours all day long, you get pretty spaced out. But like I say, I was outside having a coffee, 4 hours into the shoot, still smoking my cigar. I now was addicted to cigar smoking.
Well, you had touched on, of course, Born on the 4th of July, but in a film with a few similar themes, you played another agent in A Few Good Men.
Yeah, that was nice because I got the job through a casting friend of mine, Jane
Hmm.
Jenkins, and I came in, and the cameraman there was the same cameraman that was on Born on the 4th of July. So he said, "Hi, Frank. Good morning, Frank." And I said, "Yeah." And then Rob Reiner was there, and I guess he had seen me. He had remembered me from what did I work on with him? I forget another movie. And so my gig was I say good morning to Tom Cruise walking down the hall, and Tom remembered me, of course, Born on the 4th of July. So he says,
Hmm.
"Frank, how you doing?" Blah blah blah. So it's nice and cordial. And Tom walks down the hall, and I say, "Ah, working late tonight, Lieutenant?" And he says, "Yeah, I am." And then he goes in the room, and of course, the guy who goes in the room and interviews kills himself moments later. That's the scene. And I look at Rob Reiner and he said, "That was perfect, Frank. Go home." So that was a good $1,500 day. I think I worked about 20 minutes. I had a great time with everybody and had lunch and go home. That was the greatest. You actors think you want to keep doing it. No, you don't want to keep doing it if you're doing it wrong. You want the director to say, perfect. One, I think they shot it twice and then they just go home. So they had it in the can.
I've heard good things about Tom Cruise.
I love him.
Mm-hmm.
He's a great guy. I'll tell you an interesting story. I'm born on the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
I was made up as a street rebel. I had a ripped up shirt. I had dirt on my face. I had half a growth of beard. But I had my own trailer. I mean, so what I mean. And in my trailer, I had locked my wallet and everything else because who needs a wallet and all that shit on a set while you're working? And we were working 2 days in a row to late hours in the morning, doing these riot scenes and everything else. And Oliver kept consulting with me because I had shot the original documentary of the scene. So of course he would say, "Frank, how is that there? Is that too many policemen over there? Is that how is it? Where were you veterans staged when this happened on the street?" So that's what was happening with me. Plus I was playing a role in it. I was playing one of the veterans leading the groups down the street. I was arrested at one point, but then I changed costume and I was playing another part, disguised kind of with a headband around. Anyway, coming back to the set, I got confused and I went behind the stanchion. And this cop says to me, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to work." He said, "No, you're not, because I'm looking like a dirty street guy with a ripped shirt." And he said, "Show me your ID." I said, "I don't have any ID. My ID is in my trailer." He says, like, "Oh, yeah." So anyway, he and another cop grabbed me and they're going to take me off to jail. I'm on my way to the set. Well, Tom Hanks and at the time his name was Rita Rogers. I think he was married to that.
You mean Tom Cruise? Oh no,
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise. Yeah, Tom Cruise and Rita Rogers coming down this gangway where I should have been, where all the trailers were for the actors and everything. And Tom sees this happening, and he comes over to this officer, and the guy, of course, is freaked out because now Tom Cruise is talking to him. He said, "What's going on here, officer?" He said, "Well, we got this guy trying to get on the set." He said, "He better be on the set within 5 minutes because he's in the scene we're about to do." And the guy says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And so they lift up this stanchion wire, and I said, "Thanks, Tom." And he said, "Don't mention it." So that's the kind of guy he is. He could have been walking right on by and screw Frank Cavestani, because I'm doing a minor thing. I was just going up to the set to talk to Oliver. And but he went out of his way, came out with this guy, and he knew that him saying anything would get me off the hook because this Allied security guard, whoever he was, would say, "Mr. Cruz, I'm so sorry," which is exactly what happened. He said, the guy said he's trying to get on the set. He said they better be on the set within about 5 minutes because we all just got called because we were in this huge arena in Dallas. And what would happen is they would say, this loudspeaker system was like, "Actors to the set," and they would name a few. Tom Cruise, Frank Cavestani, "Frank, go to the director, please." And that's what would happen. But this security guard, he had no idea who any of us were. He just thought I was a dirty looking, made up, street guy. But that's what I was. And of course, I had no idea on me. I mean, they could have took me off to jail and I would say, "I don't have anything," because who takes their wallet to a riot?
Oh.
Especially a staged riot. You know what I mean?
Well, you also played. Well, speaking of policemen, you play one in Man's Best Friend with Ali Sheedy.
Oh yeah, that's funny because Ali's so adorable.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a friend on there. Costanza, his name is, I think, an actor, the one who asked me to look behind the barrel. And there's this, what they have is a makeshift sort of gun of guy with his neck cut or whatever, and so you're looking at that, and it's not a real person; it's a dummy. You know what I mean? So, but there was not much happening that day, except I made friends with Costanza. I think that's his name. No, that's the same name as the guy on Seinfeld. But this other actor, and he asked me to come shoot something, and we ended up directing a minor thing together downtown L.A. on the streets of LA late at night. So that was good. I got something out of that. It's great because everything leads to something else. Someone says, "Hey, we could do this thing together. Could you direct it?" Blah blah blah, and I did. And the worst thing about it is we had to have a rain, and it's hard to get rain. You have to put up this piping and these hoses and the things above the actors and make it look like rain rather than getting run over by a garden hose. So we did that down in LA in a doorway. I don't know what he ever did with the stuff. The only thing I remember closely was that the makeup girl was really cute, and he took us all to dinner at an Italian restaurant, and it was delicious. But other than that, it's not much of an event to talk about.
Well, 1995, you were in two high-profile films. One, of course, we previously mentioned, American President, but you were also played a reporter in Apollo 13.
Really, Apollo? Oh, Apollo 13. Ron was very nice to me. He asked me to keep doing these things so he could allow the camera. He said, "Could you like take your hand out of your pocket or give me some signal so we can start zooming in?" Because I was one of the reporters. So they were, they were up in a high crane above it. We were actually shooting at the facility in El Segundo, which JPL Labs. They had the real uh, pods there and everything. You know what I mean? That was the real thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Okay, so that was the real thing. So we were all there, and I was playing one of the reporters. So he asked me to do that, which was great. I kept doing that for him. I would take my hand out when the guys would come down because he couldn't see them when they would come out of the pod and go to the table and be interviewed. So so he asked me to do that, and then he would start moving the crane down past over the head of the actors playing the news reporters, which I was one of. And he walked up to me later, and it was right. He was really grateful. He said, "You did that perfect, Frank. Thanks a lot. You really helped us out." So I did that a few times, but I don't think you see my face or anything in that movie. Although the good part for me, as a working actor at the time, is they put me on a hold. Now a hold is real interesting. That means I can go home and play golf, and they're paying me because they got me on a hold. It means I can't work anywhere else. I got to work with them, so they're going to pay me another week and call me when they want to call me, but I can't work for anything else. So that's like it's like overtime without working. So you'll get paid. Don't work for anyone else. You're on a hold. We got you. You're ours. If we call you at 2 in the morning, you come in. You got to come in. You're already being paid. But anyway, that never happened. I don't think I ever went back in, and they just paid me the money.
One film I forgot to bring up here, going back, I don't know why I missed it. You play a TV reporter in Perfect. It's funny. I don't do a lot of the stuff with the online signings, but I did make an online signing purchase last year, and I just got the result in the mail, a signed Saturday Night Fever picture of John Travolta. And of course, he and Jamie Lee Curtis were great casting for Perfect. Always liked John. I've heard great things about him. Any stories about being on that film?
Yes and no. One of them was Jamie Lee Curtis came out of a trailer, and her dog was yelping and yelping, and the crew was all looking at it because we were out in a parking lot across from the sheriff's jail downtown. And she said, "I don't know what's wrong with him. I just gave him head a little while ago." So, making a dirty joke, which the crew all love. But you see why people do that is the crew says, "Oh, what a great lady." You know what I mean? it's a stupid joke. She didn't mean anything, but she knows that suddenly every crew member thinks, "What a great lady! She's going to have lunch with us, and she's not a snob." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a John Travolta story. Jimmy
Hmm.
Bridges, who was a friend of mine, he and his his partner Jack Larson, because they were together for years before gay marriage or anything. Two wonderful guys, and we went to lunch at a restaurant in Los Angeles with Travolta, and someone else was there besides me, but I forget who. So we're there, and John said, "I'm going to the men's room. Excuse me, everybody." So he gets up and he walks across this room in the afternoon, somewhere near Robinson and in West Hollywood, and the room goes silent as he walks across because most of the tables are filled with these afternoon ladies having lunch, and he goes to the men's room. So we're all talking and chatting and talking and chatting, and the room is buzzing and talking and chatting, and it's loud and out. And suddenly the room goes silent, and Jimmy Bridges says, "John's coming back." Because we knew he was coming back 60 feet from us, because as soon as he presented himself at the head of the tables, everybody just all stopped talking, which I thought was a real interesting moment, and an experience you, Greg, and I will never have. That John knew when he comes out of the men's room, the restaurant goes silent. I'm talking about silence. And then he crossed back to our table and sat down. And then they started talking again. It was really a great moment. I loved that. I was just, I like to see that in a movie someday. And Jimmy saying, "John's coming back," because the room went quiet.
You're also, of course, in my favorite Martian. Um,
Am I?
it says, according to this, you're the tanning contest MC. Now, I saw
Oh,
that in
right,
theaters
right.
when that came out, so I haven't seen it since. I
Oh,
I remember Elizabeth Hurley looking very stunning in it.
yeah. I would. The best thing about that was the limousine ride to Santa Barbara. The agent called me early in the morning and said, "Look, they need someone up in Santa Barbara to do the MC thing on this." And I said, "Okay." They said, "Well, the limousine will be at your door like 4:35 in the morning. They want you up there early." So I had a limo and they took me there. And I did this MC thing, which is basically background on background. I mean, I'm there saying, I said, "What am I saying?" They said, "I don't know, make up whatever you want to say. You're running this sun tanning contest or something on the docks." So I don't remember too much. One thing about it was I was working with I think Dan Petrie Jr. Who directed that.
Yeah, that's who directed it. Yeah.
Well, the first thing I did out of American Academy was my Defenders, and his father was directing it, Dan Petrie Jr.,
Hmm.
who hired me as a child. Basically, I was like 18 years old to work in over the Christmas weekend on this Defenders. It wasn't a Defender. What is it called? Defenders? Then I think it was called Defenders. Yeah. So I worked with his father, and then had this job with him. I told him that, but I don't think he was too impressed. I don't think it sunk in so much that I worked with his dad.
Well, I got a few other films I want to ask you about. Wild Orchards 2, Two Shades of Blue.
Yeah, with Zelman King.
Hmm.
Well, and that's another one that was a great hire because I went in to see him, and he said, "You want to work with me?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You got it." That was that simple. I love those kind of hirings. People just say, "Sure, I got a part for you," and you don't have to audition or do anything or jump through hoops. They just say, "Show up." There you go. The terrible thing about that, and I like Zelman a lot. We were friendly outside the set and working, is that I got there like 9 or 10 in the morning. They had their problems with that Union Station in California. They
Uh-huh.
didn't shoot me until 1 o'clock at night. Can you imagine being in a little trailer with a little piss add water coming out of the faucets and people delivering you tea when you want it, but you're having a lunch, three meals, overtime meals. And at 1 in the morning, they say, okay, you're on. And I'm like shaking. I'm like, I got up at like 6 in the morning to be there at 9 in the morning, and now it's 1 a.m. and they're going to shoot me. And then they tell me the guy who I'm supposed to do the scene with, they let go. He went and they sent him home. Oh, Zelman's saying, oh, it's terrible. So I got to make up the scene on my own. By that time, I'm shaking. And the minor actors in the scene are telling me how to do it. Oh, just relax, kid. And I'm getting angry. I'm saying, go fuck yourself. Give me alone here. Let me, because I'm like cranky. And Zelma's seeming from the other side of Union Station. Oh, Frank, come on, just hold those bills in your hand. And I screaming back to him, go fuck yourself, stuff. So I go walk into him and I tell him that. I said, fuck you. Fuck. I said, it's 1 o'clock in the fucking morning. I've been here since 9 o'clock in the morning. So if I'm shaky, that's why I'm shaky. So I go, anyway, we go do the scene. I shoot it. I relax a little and we get it done. And the next morning, I'm on next day or day after that, I'm on the set for something else where I have to walk up to the girl and accost her and have sex with her or something like that. And he's telling me it's not going his way. I find out later that he's got a crush on this girl, who is the girl I'm supposed to be having sex with, and so he doesn't like the way I'm doing it because he doesn't like that I'm doing it at all. And it's and now by that time some actor had whispered this in my ear. It's getting a little sick, and I'm thinking. And he takes me off stage and said, "Do this, do that." I said, "He'd tell me, you know what? Go fuck yourself. This is so sick. This whole fucking thing is driving me nuts." So anyway, I shot the scene. He liked it, and that's the end of that story. And then he died a couple of years later.
Tell me about we're gonna go early here. Working with Candy Darling.
Candy, I love Candy. Candy
Yeah.
loved me too. No, we liked each other a lot. She was beautiful. God, I mean, I know she was a man, but she was gorgeous. I used to like sitting with her. I used to hang out with her and Andy Warhol at the Max's Kansas City at late night in the evening, sit at their tables and schmooze. And Candy would always say, "Sit next to me, Frank. Sit next to me." So that was great. Andy said, "I always thought Frank should become a homosexual, but it's a quote in the book he said to people about me. But I did a film with Andy called something Women or something Women River. I forget what it was. But Andy,
Women in Revolt.
Women in Revolt. Yeah, I did that. That was
Hmm.
that was kooky. They used to shoot off the cuff. Andy and Paul, his partner, whatever his partner's name is now, I can't even think. They're on the street in Manhattan in a limo. I'm shooting a scene with Jackie Curtis, and Jackie smacks me in the head with a helmet. A helmet, construction helmet.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, that really hurt. I almost went unconscious. I mean, you go smacked in the head with a steel helmet, and she thinks it's funny. And I said, Jackie, I'm going to kick your ass. And I start chasing her down the street. And that's in the movie because they thought it was great. Oh, it was a great scene, you guys fighting each other. But here's the reality of it. I come back to where we were, and everybody's gone except me and a police officer. And he said, what was going on here? I said, they were shooting a film. He said, do you have a film permit? I said, do I have? I don't have a film permit. I'm one of the actors in it. He said, well, we need a film permit or you guys are going to be arrested. And I said, well, let me take you to the limo. And of course, the limo is gone. So Andy and Paul went back to the factory, and I was stuck there myself with this cop. And the cop realized it was ridiculous that I was like this innocent person. The cameras are gone, everybody's gone, the limo was gone. So nothing happened to me. And I got back to the studio and I said, you guys left me in the street. And then he said, well, what we like to do is shoot Jackie giving you an enema. Can we do that here? So I said, I don't know. But anyway, that's the name of that tune. Yeah, that's Women in Revolt. What were we really talking about? We were talking about something else?
Candy Darling, and of
Oh,
course,
Candy.
Brand X. She was also in that. So.
Well, Brand X, I was much more involved in. I was a producer. I was an editor at some points.
Mm-hmm.
I was a writer with Win Chamberlain. We all lived together. That was a great time. We lived together in a loft on 23rd near Fifth Avenue, across from the Iron Building, and had interesting people there every night, including Candy and Andy. Uh, we had a house in upstate New York near, I think their house was near Barrington or something like that. And in that house was the what's his Steve Paul from the scene, who was later involved in Woodstock, which
Mm-hmm.
got us tickets to Woodstock. I mean, Timothy Leary lived near us, and people would go over to his place and take acid. And it was upstate. I love upstate New York. It's a beautiful place. I don't know if you've been there,
No.
but it's where Bard College is, uh, Rhinebeck, New York, and stuff. Beautiful. We stayed for a while at the Jacob Astor Estate, right on the river, where we had canoes. We would canoe out into the rivers, and all of the while we had editing stuff delivered to the house. Those not it was before Ken tables. It was those old Kennesaw tables. So we had two of them, and we would shoot the film and edit it in this one room in the house, and then make dinners. It was a great time, you know, filmmaking and hanging out with friends, all in one, like canoeing in the morning. I mean, God, it's just so incredible a period of time. And we made this film, Brand X, which Wynn had written and kept raising money for. But it was what it was. It's a very kooky movie, but a fun movie. I thought one of the best scenes they ever did was with Tally Brown and me running around in a white. Do you ever see this movie?
I haven't, no, but the pictures on
Take a look at it.
IMDb, yeah, look
Yeah, take a
interesting.
look at it. The scene with me and Tally Brown, me chasing her around. She's kind of overweight woman in a nurse's costume, and I've got a white nurse's costume on, and chasing her. Just goofy sort of slapstick kind of stuff. I don't know if the movie ever made any sense at all. It was supposed to be about a TV set, and
Okay.
what happened, and so I did some commercial. We did commercials, and we did moments. We did moments of news. Taylor Mead read poetry in it. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is out of a period of time, and I think it'll, as years go by, to look back at this and know what was happening in the '70s in New York. I know.
I was
Yeah.
born in the 70s. That's one thing that was happening.
Yeah, that was happening. Okay, great.
1972, I was born. Um, and the last film I want to touch on is Events.
Yeah, that's another like I did a play with Shelley Witness. The stage
Uh-huh.
manager of the play was a guy named Fred Baker. Fred
Yep.
Baker wanted to direct and have his own movies, and then he had this idea about doing a movie about two young guys who wanted to be filmmakers, but they were going broke, so they decided to do a sex film of some kind. And that basically was the movie. Fred was great because he could get a movie out there and make money on it, even though a lot of people didn't see it. So I don't know. I don't have a big opinion about that film, but it was fun making.
Okay. Well, is there any like you got listed here as writer on a couple films, director credits, and
Well, I wrote a movie for Lucille Ball and CBS called Sentimental Journey. It was a
okay.
remake idea of people who adopt a child, an orphan child, and then one of the parents dies, and then they're sort of stuck with the idea of, do I really want a child? I wanted a child when I had a husband, but do I want a child when I don't have a husband anymore? And then there was stuff where the ghost came back, and it was originally made with John Payne and someone else, I think 49. You can look it up, Sentimental Journey. And they
Mm-hmm.
really had the idea because there was a song that was popular then, which is gonna take a sentimental journey, gonna take it on my own. And some producer out here says, let's make a movie about that. And they did make a movie about that. And it was all right. John Payne was a bit of a stiff in it. And so years later, they made, I think, another one about it with Lauren Bacall. And then Lucille Wall wanted to make this movie, and they liked me and my writer, Darlene Craviotto. So they said, do a rewrite. So we did a rewrite. And in those days, it was really great because if you did a rewrite and they paid you, they actually went out and made it because it was what they called a movie of the week. And they went to New York and they shot it, and it's a movie. You can actually see it somewhere online somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. Well, do you have any I know you have a web page. Do you want to plug that on here?
Acting on the web at gmail.com, actingontheweb.com actually,
Mm-hmm.
and it's getting some very good reviews. And if I learn how to make money with it, like put ads on it and everything, it'll make me money. But right now, it doesn't really make me money. But people actually like it because it's got a lot of information about acting and everything on it. So and now everybody, including yourself, I'm sure, want to be actors in Hollywood.
Well,
No,
I'd be a horrible actor, but if somebody put me in a scene with Emma Stone,
yeah.
I I like her.
Well, I think there was a movie years made in the 40s called Actress, or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. With my mind's not working well today, but anyway, it was about a young girl wanting to go to New York from upstate New York and become an actress, and and none of her neighbors wanted to do that, and it was embarrassing to her parents. Spencer Tracy, I think, was the father in it.
Okay.
But nowadays, everybody in the building I live in, everybody on the streets, they all want to be actors. They don't want to be anything else. They want to act on their own. They're going to make their own movies, which is I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. Actually, Francis Ford Coppola said years ago that where it's going to happen is some garage in Tulsa. Some kid's going to make the best thing we've ever seen. And actually, a lot of people are doing that right now with these. There's these things that capture policemen being obnoxious to people, and they're popular. And you look at that thing, and they got like 71,000 comments, and you can sell soap that way. So
Yep.
it's a whole different time. I wish I would knew. I mean, you see, the thing about me is I would do something more on my website, acting on the web. I'm, I'm punching it up right now, actingontheweb.com. But it just tires me out being on the internet doing the stuff. I like writing in a notebook. I writing poetry. I'm working on a script now with my wife, and she's doing much of the typing because my left hand, since I'm older now, has been vibrating, and it's hard to type for me to type. But I can speak as I'm speaking to you. I love this, by the way. I had a good time remembering myself as a person.
I'm glad. I was happy to have you on.
I
I was happy to have you on. Glad we are able to
uh,
make this work. Yeah.
well, let me know if people are really listening to it. I'd love it.
Well, I was going to ask before we close off, do you have any charities that you want to plug and promote on here that you're involved with?
Well, I always give money to the Red Cross. I'm actually going to give some blood over there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust a lot of other charities. I mean, even the veterans ones, some of them, years ago they get caught. These guys are pulling down $1 million salaries by helping disabled veterans. I think, like, give me a break. You're making how much money? So they were taking, 20% of the donations and putting it in their own pockets, which God bless them. Maybe they should do that. But I just don't feel like giving to that, even though I'm personally involved in that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I work with veterans all the time. But no. So I would give it to the Red Cross or something like that if I had a choice
Absolutely.
between.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? It has been wonderful having you on here today. I'm glad we're able to make this work out, and get you on Zoom here and have a nice chat and reminisce. It's been great. And
How do I get people to listen to this? What do I have to do?
well, what I'll do when it's all set and ready, I'll send you the link and you can put it up on your web
Facebook.
page if you want to, or Facebook. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And you exploit as much as you want, Greg. I'm not uptight about any of that. So just do what you exploit the shit out of me.
Well, I will. I'll put it up on my social media and put
Yeah.
it out there. And yeah, but it's been wonderful, and I love the stories you've been sharing. Um, a lot of stuff, like I said, when I go into an interview, I have some things I'm going to ask, but I love it when I get answers that are just completely what I wouldn't expect. And you gave a lot of very interesting stories here today. So this has been great.
Oh, good, good, Greg. Anytime. I've had an interesting life, and I'm very willing to share it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think I know some other podcasts who probably want to reach out, especially people that love horror films, would talk Deadly Friend. I love your
Great.
story on the set of that.
Oh, isn't it great? He said, and Wes says to me, "Why? What's your problem?" I said, "I think I'm going to be horribly sick." I really could. My stomach was gurgling. They say one thing, and you can look it up too, about food poisoning. Is when you get it, it happens instantly. I talked to
Yeah.
another man about it. He said I knew it right away. I started sweating. I felt weak in my knees, and my stomach I knew was about to explode. The food poisoning does not take like a week. It's like if you get it, bang, you're sick. And
Yep.
that's what happened to me. And I'm on the set there, and all those cables all running to the lighting and everything, and I'm regurgitating. Oh, they were not pleased with me at all. Go home, young man. Go home. Okay, now.
Well, before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Absolutely. Sure, of course.
Just state your name and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Hi, this is Frank Cavestani, and I'm listening gladly to Greg Gilbert's Python on what?
Python's Paradise.
Oh, I'm listening to Greg. Let's do this again.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So let me write this down so I get it right.
Sure.
My brain doesn't work so much as it. Greg's what?
Python's Paradise. It's the name of the show. Greg Gilbert, Python's Paradise. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, for me too, Greg. I feel like having a better day. Hi, this is Frank Cavestani, and I've been. Hello, this is Frank Cavestani, and we've been listening. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what you want me to say. Greg Gilbert's Python Paradise.
Yep.
Okay, we've been listening to it, or you've been listening to it. Is that it?
Yep. Yep.
Hi, this is Frank Cavestani, and you've been listening to Greg Gilbert's Python Paradise. Enjoy. Peace.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Frank. You stay safe out there and have yourself a wonderful day. And thank you for allowing me the honor today.
My honor. Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
God bless you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.